What if the Earth itself could rewrite its own history overnight? Picture this: you go to bed with the familiar horizon outside your window, only to wake up to a towering mountain where there was nothing but flat land the day before. It sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel, but this is exactly what happened in a remote corner of our world, leaving scientists, locals, and historians utterly stunned. The mountain that grew overnight isn't just a curiosity, it's a real-time glimpse into the chaotic, unpredictable forces that shape our planet. And today, we're going to unravel the mystery behind this jaw-dropping event, piece by piece. Think about the ground beneath your feet: solid, unchanging, reliable. We build our lives on that assumption, trusting that the Earth will stay as it's always been. But what if that trust is misplaced? The sudden rise of this mountain challenges everything we thought we knew about geology, time, and the very stability of our world. Ancient cultures told stories of lands that shifted overnight, of gods who sculpted the Earth in moments, legends we once dismissed as myth. Now, science is catching up to those tales, revealing a planet far more dynamic and volatile than we ever imagined. This isn't just a story about rocks and tectonic plates. It's about the awe-inspiring power of nature, the mysteries that still lie buried in our planet's crust, and the thin line between myth and reality. From baffled villagers to teams of geologists scrambling for answers, the emergence of this mountain has sparked debates, inspired folklore, and even reshaped our understanding of Earth's history. So buckle up, because by the end of this journey, you'll never look at the ground beneath you the same way again. The question isn't just how this mountain appeared overnight, but what it means for the future of our ever-changing world. The idea of a mountain appearing in mere hours seems impossible until you realize the Earth's crust isn't as rigid as it appears. Deep beneath our feet, unimaginable forces are constantly at work, and occasionally they break through in spectacular fashion. So what exactly causes land to rise so suddenly? One leading theory points to magma, molten rock trapped beneath the surface, building pressure like a coiled spring. When it finds a weak spot in the crust, it can lift entire sections of land upward in a matter of days or even hours. Picture a balloon inflating underground, silently pushing the Earth above it until the ground itself buckles and rises. But magma isn't the only culprit. In some cases, tectonic plates, those massive slabs of Earth's crust, can shift abruptly, jostling against one another with enough force to thrust land upward almost instantaneously. Think of it like a rug bunching up when you push it across the floor. Now imagine that rug is miles thick, and you start to grasp how these sudden formations occur. Even landslides, though rare on such a scale, can rearrange entire landscapes when unstable slopes collapse and pile up into new hills or ridges overnight. What's truly fascinating is how often these events appear in ancient myths. Indigenous legends from the Andes speak of mountains rising in a single night as acts of gods or spirits. Medieval European chronicles describe hills born from earthquakes, with some even claiming to hear the earth groan as it reshaped itself. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as exaggeration until modern geology confirmed that yes, the earth really can rewrite its own terrain in the blink of an eye. Scientists studying these events face a unique challenge: catching them in action. Most geological changes unfold over epochs, but sudden uplifts are like cosmic magic tricks. Here one moment, gone the next. Satellites and seismic sensors now help track these anomalies, yet each new case reshapes our understanding of how dynamic our planet truly is. Whether it's a hidden fault line slipping or a pocket of magma making its move, one thing is clear: the ground beneath us is anything but still. And if history is any guide, this mountain won't be the last surprise the Earth has in store. Across cultures and centuries, stories of mountains bursting forth in a single night echo with eerie consistency. In the Himalayas, Hindu texts describe the demon king Ravana's audacious attempt to uproot Mount Kailash only for the gods to slam it back into place, leaving the land forever changed by his defiance. Meanwhile, the Lakota people tell of Bear Butte in South Dakota, a sacred hill said to have risen abruptly after a great spirit stamped its foot upon the plains. Even medieval monks in Switzerland recorded eerie accounts of new peaks appearing after earthquakes, interpreting them as divine warnings etched into the landscape. What's striking isn't just the similarity of these tales, it's how often they align with real geological phenomena. Take the legendary formation of Japan's Mount Fuji, which folklore claims erupted into existence in a single night 2,600 years ago. Modern studies reveal Fuji's early eruptions did indeed reshape the region with startling speed, proving oral traditions weren't merely poetic exaggeration. Similarly, Greek myths describing Poseidon striking the earth to create mountains mirror the Mediterranean's real history of seismic uplifts, like the island of Thera's catastrophic transformation during the Bronze Age. These stories served as ancient science, attempts to explain the unexplainable. When the ground itself defied logic, our ancestors wove narratives to make sense of the chaos. The Maori of New Zealand speak of the god Tumatoanga heaving mountains skyward during battles with his brothers, while Inca legends describe peaks growing overnight to shield villages from invaders. Today, geologists recognize these mythic events as plausible descriptions of fault slips or volcanic intrusions, natural processes that, under rare conditions, can unfold almost instantaneously. The deeper we dig into these accounts, the more they reveal. Medieval European chronicles often linked sudden mountain births to moral lessons, interpreting them as heaven's judgment. Yet buried within those moralizing layers are precise details, reports of booming sounds, trembling earth, and even the scent of sulfur that mirror modern observations of geologic upheaval. It's as if our ancestors left us cryptic field notes disguised as folklore. Perhaps the most haunting parallel lies in humanity's shared instinct to ascribe meaning to these events. Whether seen as divine punishment, spiritual gifts, or cosmic battles, these sudden formations remind us how small we are against the planet's raw power. And as science unravels the truths behind the legends, one question lingers. If so many cultures independently recorded these phenomena, how many other myths might still be waiting to be decoded as geological truths? One of the most dramatic examples of rapid geological change unfolded in 2018, when a previously flat stretch of farmland in Pakistan's Balochistan region transformed into a fully formed mountain in just 4 days. Locals first noticed the ground trembling, a deep, unsettling vibration that sent animals fleeing. Then, like something out of a dream, the earth began to swell. Cracks split the soil as a massive dome of rock and dirt pushed skyward, eventually reaching over 100 feet high. Scientists later confirmed this wasn't just a landslide or erosion at work. It was a literal birth of a mountain, triggered by a sudden shift in tectonic plates beneath the surface. What makes this event so groundbreaking is how it defies the slow, grinding pace we associate with mountain formation. Typically, peaks like the Himalayas take millions of years to rise as plates collide inch by inch. But in Balochistan, pressure along a previously unknown fault line reached a breaking point, causing the crust to snap upward like a trapdoor. Satellite images captured the entire process, showing the land warping in real time. Geologists compared it to watching a time lapse of geological forces usually hidden from human eyes. Similar events have reshaped landscapes without warning throughout history. In 1959, a massive earthquake in Montana's Hebgen Lake area triggered a landslide so powerful it dumped 80 million tons of rock into a valley, instantly creating a new mountain named Earthquake Ridge. Even more startling was the 2013 event in the Ziyarat district of Pakistan, where an entire village was lifted 30 feet overnight by a subterranean fault reactivation. Residents woke to find their homes tilted at bizarre angles, roads severed like broken zippers, and fresh cliffs where flat land had been. Technology is now peeling back the curtain on these phenomena. Satellite radar systems can detect ground movements as subtle as a few millimeters, while seismic networks map hidden stress buildues in the crust. Researchers have even begun using artificial intelligence to predict where sudden uplifts might occur by analyzing patterns in historical data. Yet for all our advances, these events remain humbling reminders of Earth's raw power capable of rewriting geography faster than we can document it. The implications stretch far beyond scientific curiosity. Entire communities now live with the knowledge that the ground beneath them could literally rise without warning. In some regions, folklore has adapted to reflect this reality, with elders teaching younger generations to recognize the subtle signs, unusual animal behavior, strange groundwater shifts that might precede such upheavals. It's a chilling thought that the most solid thing we know, the Earth itself, can change its mind in an instant. And as climate change alters pressure on fault lines and magma chambers, some scientists warn we may see these events become more frequent, turning geological wonders into urgent questions of human adaptation. The 2013 Pakistan earthquake didn't just shake the ground, it rewrote the coastline in real time. When the Earth convulsed with a force measuring 7.7 on the Richter scale, the seabed near the port town of Gwadar ruptured violently, spewing mud, gas, and rock into the air. Within minutes, an entirely new island emerged from the waves, rising over 60 feet high and stretching nearly 600 feet across. Satellite images captured the surreal transformation. One moment, open ocean; the next, a jagged landmass where none had existed before. Scientists rushed to study the formation, dubbing it Zalzala Ko, or Earthquake Mountain, as it offered a rare front row seat to the planet's restless creativity. This wasn't just a random upheaval, it was a mud volcano erupting under extreme pressure. Imagine a bottle of soda shaken violently, then uncapped. The earthquake acted like that sudden release, forcing a slurry of sediment and methane gas upward through cracks in the seafloor. The result, a newborn island steaming with the heat of its own creation. Yet what made Zalzala Ko so remarkable wasn't just its speed, it was how closely it mirrored descriptions from ancient mariners' logs and indigenous oral histories. Persian texts from the 9th century describe fire mountains rising from the sea after tremors, while Pacific Islander legends speak of lands born from the belly of the ocean during great upheavals. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as folklore, but here was proof, etched in mud and stone, that the Earth could indeed conjure new land in a heartbeat. The island's lifespan was brief. Waves and tides began eroding it almost immediately, and within 5 years it had vanished beneath the surface again. But its fleeting existence left an indelible mark on science. Researchers collected samples of its unique methane-rich mud, uncovering clues about how similar formations might have shaped coastlines throughout history. Even more intriguing were the microbial communities thriving in its toxic sediments, hinting at how life might adapt to sudden geological change. What's chilling is how often this phenomenon repeats. In 2015, another quake near Japan's Bonin Islands birthed a similar formation, while historical records from Greece and Indonesia document dozens of these ephemeral islands appearing and disappearing after seismic events. Each one reinforces a humbling truth: the planet doesn't operate on human timescales. It can craft a mountain in hours, erase an island in years, and reshape continents over millennia. And as we piece together these events, we're left to wonder how many of history's so-called myths were actually eyewitness accounts of the Earth's fleeting experiments in real time. Ancient civilizations didn't just witness these sudden geological upheavals, they wove them into the very fabric of their beliefs. When the ground shook or new mountains emerged overnight, it wasn't mere chance, it was the gods speaking. The Romans meticulously documented earthquakes and land shifts in their annals, interpreting them as direct warnings from Jupiter, a sudden mountain rising near Pompeii. An omen of Vesuvius's eventual fury, the Chinese imperial courts employed astronomers to track Earth-Kai disturbances, linking them to the mandate of heaven, the divine right to rule. Even the Bible's Book of Revelation describes mountains being cast into the sea as harbingers of the end times. These weren't just stories, they were frameworks for understanding a world that defied logic. What's fascinating is how these interpretations often mirrored the societies that created them. In Mesopotamia, where floods and quakes were frequent, myths described the earth as a living entity, writhing under the feet of warring deities. The Aztecs saw volcanic eruptions as battles between fire gods, while Norse sagas attributed tremors to Loki's chains straining beneath the earth. Each culture projected its fears, values, and cosmology onto these events, turning raw geologic force into narrative. Yet buried within these myths lay startlingly accurate observations. The ancient Greek historian Thucydides noted that earthquakes often preceded volcanic eruptions, a connection modern seismology confirms. Hawaiian chants describe Pele, the volcano goddess, digging pits with her staff before eruptions, mirroring the seismic swarms scientists now recognize as precursors to lava flows. Even the biblical account of Sodom's destruction, with its mentions of sulfur and fire raining from the sky, reads like an eyewitness report of a methane explosion or volcanic event. Today, we've swapped divine wrath for tectonic plates and magma chambers, but the primal awe persists. When Indonesia's Anak Krakatau volcano birthed a new island in 2018, local fishermen didn't just see a geological oddity. They left offerings at its shores, continuing a tradition older than recorded history. In Iceland, where volcanoes regularly reshape the landscape, road signs warn not just of lava flows but of hidden folk, elves said to guard unstable terrain. Science explains the how, but humanity still grapples with the why, the lingering sense that the Earth's sudden transformations carried deeper meaning. Now, as satellites track ground deformation in real time and sensors map every tremor, we face a pressing question. Are these events truly becoming more frequent, or are we just better at noticing them? Climate change adds another layer. Melting glaciers relieve pressure on fault lines, while shifting water tables can lubricate tectonic plates. The answers might lie in ancient records after all. By cross-referencing medieval chronicles of lands rising with modern geological data, researchers are uncovering patterns that suggest our planet's restlessness has rhythms we're only beginning to decipher. The ground beneath us feels permanent, unchanging, but the data tells a different story. Over the past 2 decades, satellite measurements have detected subtle uplifts and depressions across every continent, revealing an Earth in constant, quiet motion. Some of this movement is natural, the planet's crust adjusting to ancient pressures, but scientists are now asking a troubling question. Could human activity be pushing these changes into overdrive? Take melting glaciers, for example. As ice sheets vanish, the weight they once exerted on the land below disappears, like removing a brick from a coiled spring. In Alaska, parts of the coastline are rising faster than ever recorded, some areas lifting nearly 4 inches per year as the Earth rebounds from lost ice. This isn't just a local oddity, it's a global phenomenon with far-reaching consequences. Then there's the hidden impact of human engineering. Fracking, pumping water underground to extract oil and gas, has been linked to swarms of small earthquakes in places like Oklahoma and Texas, where the ground once lay quiet. Deep mining operations, too, can destabilize ancient fault lines by hollowing out the Earth's support structure. In South Africa, gold mines reaching over 2 miles deep have triggered tremors strong enough to crack buildings at the surface. Even the weight of massive dams has been shown to bend the crust beneath them, with China's Three Gorges Dam causing measurable shifts in the surrounding landscape. The evidence isn't always clear-cut. Geology operates on timescales that dwarf human records, making it hard to separate natural cycles from man-made influences. But patterns are emerging. Landslides have increased by nearly 50% in some alpine regions as permafrost thaws, while sinkholes, once rare, now swallow roads and homes with alarming regularity, particularly in areas where groundwater has been aggressively drained. The debate isn't just academic, it's urgent. If human activity is indeed destabilizing the planet's crust, the consequences could ripple far beyond isolated geological curiosities. Technology is now our best ally in tracking these changes. Satellite radar systems like Europe's Sentinel-1 can detect ground movements as slight as a few millimeters, while networks of seismic sensors map the Earth's hidden stresses in real time. Artificial intelligence algorithms sift through centuries of earthquake records, searching for clues that might predict where the next rupture will occur. Even crowdsourced data plays a role. Apps now allow hikers and farmers to report sudden cracks or ground shifts, creating a grassroots early warning system. The challenge isn't just monitoring these shifts, it's interpreting what they mean. Some scientists argue we're witnessing a temporary spike in activity, part of Earth's natural ebb and flow. Others see a troubling trend, a planet responding to the pressures we've placed upon it. One thing is certain, the age of assuming the ground beneath our feet is stable is over. Whether through ice loss, extraction, or sheer human footprint, we're learning that the Earth's crust is far more sensitive to our presence than we ever imagined. And as the data pours in, one uncomfortable truth becomes harder to ignore. We may not just be living on a changing planet, but actively changing it ourselves. Imagine having a bird's-eye view of the Earth's surface, watching as mountains rise, valleys sink, and fault lines shift, all in real time. That's exactly what modern satellite technology offers scientists today. NASA's InSAR system, short for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar, acts like a cosmic measuring tape, detecting ground movements as subtle as the width of a pencil line. By bouncing radar signals off the Earth's surface and comparing the echoes over time, it creates detailed maps of deformation, revealing hidden stresses in the crust before they erupt into earthquakes or volcanic activity. This isn't just theoretical. In 2018, InSAR data helped predict the eruption of Hawaii's Kilauea volcano days before lava began flowing, giving residents critical time to evacuate. But satellites aren't working alone. On the ground, networks of seismic sensors form a planetary nervous system, picking up vibrations too faint for humans to feel. These sensors caught the Balochistan mountains' birth in real time, recording the crust's groans as it buckled upward. In Japan, similar systems now trigger automated alerts seconds after an earthquake starts, stopping trains and shutting down gas lines before the shaking even reaches cities. The combination of space-based and ground-level monitoring has turned geology from a study of ancient events into a live broadcast of Earth's transformations. What's revolutionary isn't just the precision, it's the speed. Medieval scholars might spend decades debating whether a new mountain was a divine sign or a natural oddity. Today, scientists can pull up satellite footage, analyze seismic waveforms, and publish findings before the dust settles. When Indonesia's Anak Krakatau volcano collapsed in 2018, triggering a deadly tsunami, radar images captured the entire slope sliding into the sea within hours. This immediacy doesn't just satisfy curiosity, it saves lives. Early warnings based on real-time data have slashed earthquake fatalities in countries like Mexico and Chile, where sirens now blare before the ground starts shaking. Yet for all their sophistication, these tools have also resurrected ancient wisdom. Traditional knowledge from indigenous communities like the Maori's recognition of landslide-prone terrain or the Inuits' ability to predict ice shifts often aligns eerily with modern sensor data. Scientists are now collaborating with tribal elders in places like Alaska and New Zealand, merging millennia-old observations with cutting-edge tech to create the most complete picture yet of our restless planet. The result, a new era where myth and measurement don't contradict, they collaborate. The implications stretch far beyond disaster response. Archaeologists use InSAR to locate buried ruins by spotting subtle ground disturbances, while climate scientists track how melting permafrost warps the Arctic landscape. Even insurance companies rely on this data to adjust risk models as the ground literally shifts beneath our cities. But perhaps the most profound impact is psychological. Watching these changes unfold in real time shatters the illusion of Earth as a static stage for human drama. Instead, we're reminded we're passengers on a living, breathing planet, one that's still writing its own story, 1 millimeter at a time. When the Earth itself rewrites the landscape in an instant, it doesn't just alter geography, it reshapes the human psyche. Across time and continents, sudden geological upheavals have seared themselves into cultural memory, becoming more than events. They become mirrors reflecting how societies process the unimaginable. Take Japan's Mount Fuji, a peak so revered its eruptions inspired both terror and devotion. Ancient poets wrote of its smoke as the breath of gods, while artisans crafted delicate woodblock prints capturing its beauty, a duality of fear and reverence that still defines Japan's relationship with nature today. Disasters like Pompeii's burial under volcanic ash in 79 AD reveal a darker cultural imprint. The city's catastrophic end wasn't just a tragedy, it became a cautionary tale etched into Western consciousness. Renaissance painters resurrected its final moments in vivid detail, while Enlightenment thinkers used it as proof of nature's indifference to human ambition. Even now, the plaster casts of Pompeii's victims serve as haunting reminders of vulnerability, drawing millions to the ruins not just as tourists, but as pilgrims confronting mortality itself. But not all impacts are so grim. In Iceland, where volcanic eruptions are frequent, communities have woven adaptability into their cultural DNA. The 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption, which grounded flights across Europe, became a source of national pride. Stories of farmers herding sheep through falling ash turned into modern sagas of resilience. Meanwhile, in the Andes, indigenous Quechua people celebrate Yucucu dances after earthquakes, honoring the mountain spirits believed to cause the tremors. These traditions don't just explain disasters, they domesticate them, transforming chaos into something humans can negotiate with. The psychological ripple effects are equally profound. Studies of communities that experience sudden land changes reveal a shared trajectory: initial shock, giving way to either collective trauma or a renewed sense of purpose. After the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, survivors in Banda Aceh rebuilt their city with earthquake-resistant mosques at its heart, literally and spiritually anchoring their recovery in faith. Contrast this with the ghost towns left by the 1980s eruption of Mount St. Helens, where some residents never returned, their connection to the land severed by trauma. Perhaps most fascinating is how these events blur the line between history and myth. The sudden appearance of Nicaragua's Cerro Negro volcano in 1850 inspired such awe that locals placed crosses on its summit within weeks, as if marking a divine wound in the earth. Similarly, the rapid sinking of Indonesia's Java coastline in the 17th century birthed legends of submerged kingdoms, stories that resurfaced when archaeologists recently discovered their real counterparts beneath the waves. These narratives aren't mere folklore, they're coping mechanisms, ways for cultures to digest the indigestible. Nowhere is this cultural alchemy more visible than in art. Hokusai's The Great Wave captures not just a tsunami, but the sublime terror of nature's power, a theme echoed in modern disaster films. Literature from Virgil's Aeneid to contemporary climate fiction uses sudden geological chaos as metaphor for human struggle. Even music bears these scars. The eerie, earthquake symphonies of 18th century Europe incorporated rumbling bass lines to simulate seismic tremors, turning fear into aesthetic experience. What emerges is a paradox. The more unpredictable the Earth becomes, the more fiercely humans impose meaning upon it. Whether through shrine building on newborn volcanoes or algorithms predicting the next quake, we refuse to accept nature's chaos as meaningless. This instinct to ritualize, memorialize, and ultimately comprehend may be our most enduring response to the ground's betrayal. And as climate change accelerates geological instability, these cultural adaptations are evolving in real time, offering not just history lessons, but survival blueprints for an uncertain future. The moment the ground shifts without warning, something ancient stirs within us, a primal alarm that bypasses logic and taps directly into survival instinct. Neuroscientists studying earthquake survivors have found that sudden geological events trigger the same brain regions activated by life-threatening danger, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline long after the shaking stops. Yet alongside this fear exists its opposite, a profound awe that borders on reverence. Psychologists call this the sublime effect, where terror and wonder collide, leaving people simultaneously shattered and uplifted. Survivors of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake describe this duality vividly, the horror of watching their towns vanish under tsunami waves, followed by an almost spiritual connection to the raw power that reshaped their world. This emotional whiplash has shaped human civilizations for millennia. After Lisbon's devastating 1755 earthquake, philosophers like Voltaire grappled with how a supposedly benevolent God could permit such suffering, while architects pioneered earthquake-resistant designs that still influence building codes today. In modern Nepal, where temples have risen and fallen with seismic cycles for centuries, locals speak of Bhumi Chakra, the Earth's wheel, a concept that views destruction as inseparable from renewal. Even language reflects this duality. The Japanese word shinrai means both trust and collapse, encapsulating humanity's fraught relationship with the ground beneath us. What's remarkable is how consistently these events forge resilience. Following the 2010 Haiti earthquake, researchers documented post-traumatic growth in communities that banded together to rebuild, with survivors reporting stronger social bonds despite unimaginable loss. Similarly, when Indonesia's Mount Merapi erupted in 2010, villagers who refused to evacuate later described the ordeal as a test of faith, some even collecting volcanic rocks as sacred talismans. This instinct to transform trauma into meaning appears universal, from California's earthquake drills becoming cultural rituals to Icelandic sagas recasting volcanic eruptions as battles between elemental giants. Folklore acts as a living archive of these psychological journeys. The Maori legend of Uamoko, the earthquake god still kicking in his mother's womb, mirrors modern science's understanding of seismic energy as restless and unborn. Native American tribes recount how the Great Spirit molded mountains during arguments with lesser deities, explaining both their sudden appearance and sacred status. These stories do more than explain natural phenomena. They provide emotional scaffolding, allowing societies to process events too vast for individual comprehension. Nowhere is this cultural alchemy more visible than in art. Hokusai's The Great Wave captures not just a tsunami, but the sublime terror of nature's power, a theme echoed in modern disaster films. Literature from Virgil's Aeneid to contemporary climate fiction uses sudden geological chaos as metaphor for human struggle. Even music bears these scars. The eerie, earthquake symphonies of 18th century Europe incorporated rumbling bass lines to simulate seismic tremors, turning fear into aesthetic experience. What emerges is a paradox. The more unpredictable the Earth becomes, the more fiercely humans impose meaning upon it. Whether through shrine building on newborn volcanoes or algorithms predicting the next quake, we refuse to accept nature's chaos as meaningless. This instinct to ritualize, memorialize, and ultimately comprehend may be our most enduring response to the ground's betrayal. And as climate change accelerates geological instability, these cultural adaptations are evolving in real time, offering not just history lessons, but survival blueprints for an uncertain future. Long before seismographs or satellite imaging, humanity kept records of Earth's upheavals in the most enduring medium of all storytelling. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia describe in their Dreamtime narratives how the ancestral serpent Unga carved rivers and raised mountains, tales modern geologists now recognize as astonishingly accurate accounts of landscape formation over millennia. When these oral traditions speak of the time when the Earth shook until the stars fell, they may well be preserving eyewitness accounts of ancient meteor impacts or megaquakes that science is only now beginning to date. Iceland's medieval sagas take this preservation a step further, blending history with geology in ways that still startle researchers. The Eldgjá chapter of the Landnámabók doesn't just mention a volcanic eruption. It details the exact color of the ash cloud, the direction of lava flows, and even the sulfur smell that lingered for years. These aren't vague legends, they're field reports disguised as literature. Scientists cross-referencing these accounts with ice core samples and ash layers have pinpointed the described eruption to within months, despite it occurring over 1,000 years ago. What makes these stories so valuable isn't just their accuracy, it's their perspective. Where modern science measures seismic waves and magma viscosity, traditional knowledge captures the human experience of geological chaos. The Maori story of Uamoko, the unborn god whose movements cause quakes, poetically mirrors the scientific concept of pent-up tectonic energy. Native American tribes along the Pacific Northwest tell of a great flood that matches geological evidence for a massive 18th century tsunami. But their versions include something science can't measure: the terror of watching whole villages vanish underwater, and the resilience required to rebuild. This intersection of myth and geology reveals patterns we might otherwise miss. When multiple cultures separated by oceans describe similar events, like sudden mountain formations or rivers of fire, it suggests global phenomena rather than local oddities. The Klamath people's legend of Mount Mazama's collapse aligns perfectly with the volcanic crater we now call Crater Lake, while Greek myths about Typhon's imprisonment under Mount Etna may encode ancestral memories of particularly violent eruptions. Even the Bible's account of Jericho's walls falling could reference the active fault line running beneath the ancient city. Perhaps most compelling are the warning signs embedded in these traditions. The Tohono O'odham people of Arizona tell of the ground breathing before major quakes, a description modern seismologists recognize as foreshock activity. In Japan, centuries-old village markers depicting drowning waves now guide tsunami evacuation routes. These aren't just stories, they're survival guides passed down through generations, proving that sometimes the most advanced geological technology we have is the human memory, carefully preserved in the language of myth. As climate change accelerates geological instability, scientists are turning to these traditional narratives with new urgency. When Andean elders speak of mountains growing restless before landslides, or Alaskan Inuit describe the land feeling loose before glacial outburst floods, they're offering insights no instrument can measure. The challenge now is listening not just to the data from our satellites, but to the voices from our past who understood that the Earth doesn't just move, it speaks. And sometimes it shouts. The Mayan Dresden Codex doesn't just predict celestial events, it describes periods of Earth turning over, when mountains would rise and rivers change course. Modern geologists studying sediment layers in Central America have found evidence of catastrophic landslides and volcanic eruptions that align eerily with these ancient timelines. Similarly, the Hopi prophecy of the Great Purification speaks of the land buckling like a blanket shaken by giants, a description that could easily fit the sudden uplifts witnessed in Pakistan or the rapid sinking of Indonesia's Java coast. What's striking isn't that these predictions exist, it's how often they intersect with verifiable geological records. Take the ancient Chinese text known as the Bamboo Annals, which records a sudden upheaval in 2650 BCE, where rivers ran backward and new hills sprang forth. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as poetic exaggeration until core samples from the Yellow River revealed evidence of a massive earthquake that redirected its flow around that very time. Or consider the Norse myth of Ragnarök, where the earth trembles so violently that mountains crumble and others pierce the sky. Iceland's volcanic history, with its abrupt land formations like the 1573 eruption that birthed the island of Surtsey overnight, suggests these stories might be more than metaphor. What's fascinating is how these traditions often encode practical wisdom. The Maori of New Zealand have long recited Wakatoki, or proverbs, warning against building near certain cliffs where the earth remembers its anger. Geological surveys later identified these areas as active landslide zones. In the Andes, Quechua elders speak of Turacuna, spirit markers placed where the ground has shifted before tradition that mirrors modern hazard maps. Even the Bible's Book of Amos describes the land rising like the Nile before calamity, a phenomenon now recognized as crustal uplift preceding seismic activity. Science is now catching up to these ancient insights. Researchers using AI to analyze patterns in indigenous oral histories have found statistically significant overlaps with known geological events. The Klamath tribe's story of Mount Mazama's explosion, for instance, matches the volcanic timeline to within a generation. Similarly, Aboriginal songlines describing coastal changes align with sea level rise data from the last ice age. It's as if these cultures developed their own form of seismic forecasting, not with instruments but through generations of careful observation passed down as narrative. The implications are profound. If early societies could anticipate geological chaos through subtle environmental cues, shifts in animal behavior, changes in groundwater, or even the tilt of trees, might we have lost a vital early warning system in our reliance on technology? Some scientists argue yes. In Japan, where folklore links unusual catfish behavior to impending quakes, studies confirm these fish are sensitive to electromagnetic changes preceding seismic activity. In Alaska, Inuit hunters still read ice cracks and caribou migration patterns to predict unstable terrain, knowledge that's now being incorporated into climate models. This isn't about mysticism, it's about alternative ways of knowing. Where modern science measures plate tectonics in millimeters per year, traditional knowledge often captures the bigger picture, the rhythm of the land itself. As climate change accelerates geological instability, from thawing permafrost to rising sea levels, these ancient warnings feel newly urgent. They remind us that the Earth doesn't just change, it communicates. And sometimes the clearest signals come not from satellites, but from stories told 1,000 years ago around fires, under skies alive with the same stars that watch over us today. For centuries, scholars dismissed flood myths as exaggerated allegories until geologists started pulling up core samples from lake beds and ocean floors. What they found was staggering: layers of sediment corresponding to ancient Mesopotamian accounts of the Great Flood date to around 2900 BCE, matching the very era when Sumerian tablets describe the gods unleashing waters that drowned the world. Similar evidence emerged in China, where silty deposits along the Yellow River align with Emperor Yu's legendary flood control efforts 4,000 years ago. Even the Aboriginal story of Burungurra, a giant who collapsed and caused the sea to rise, mirrors coastal erosion patterns from Australia's last major sea level surge. These aren't coincidences, they're receipts. The validation goes beyond floods. When Greek historian Thucydides wrote of a tsunami swallowing coastal towns in 426 BCE, modern researchers assumed he'd embellished until underwater archaeology revealed shattered harbor walls and shipwrecks exactly where he described. Ice cores from Greenland tell the same story, showing sulfur spikes from volcanic eruptions that Icelandic sagas had chronicled in vivid detail. Take the Eldgjá eruption of 939 AD, which medieval texts claim turned Europe's skies blood red for years. Scientists once scoffed until tree ring data confirmed global cooling so severe it caused famines as far away as China. What's revolutionary isn't just proving these accounts true, but recognizing how meticulously they were recorded. The Maya didn't just note earthquakes in their codices, they documented building techniques to withstand them, like the flexible lime mortar in Tikal's temples. Roman engineers built Venice on wooden pilings precisely because their ancestors' oral histories warned of the Adriatic's unstable sediments. This wasn't primitive guesswork. It was data collection spanning generations, encoded in folklore because writing hadn't been invented yet. Now, as climate change accelerates geological instability, these ancient records are becoming survival guides. When Thailand's 2004 tsunami hit, the Moken Sea nomads escaped harm because their Laboon legend, a story of waves that eat villages, taught them to flee to high ground at the ocean's first unnatural retreat. Similarly, Andean farmers still plant quinoa at elevations their Inca ancestors designated as safe zones after volcanic eruptions centuries ago. The irony is poignant. Our satellites and sensors sometimes confirm what oral traditions knew all along. Yet the most urgent question isn't about the past, it's about tomorrow. If our ancestors accurately predicted disasters based on subtle environmental cues, have we lost that skill beneath our screens? In Japan, where elderly residents recognized the 2011 tsunami's warning signs, unusual fish behavior, receding wells seconds before alarms sounded, scientists now study these anecdotes as legitimate early warning systems. Meanwhile, geologists are racing to digitize indigenous knowledge before elders pass away, creating databases where cave paintings of fire mountains overlay modern seismic maps with eerie precision. The lesson is clear: the Earth's next surprise won't be entirely unexpected. The clues are there, in sediment layers, in tree rings, in stories told 1,000 times around fires. The real challenge isn't predicting change, but remembering how to listen. Because sometimes the most advanced technology we have is a 4,000-year-old warning carved in stone, waiting for us to finally take it seriously. Despite our satellites and sensors, the next sudden mountain could rise without warning, and the real question isn't just if it will happen, but where. Modern cities cling to fault lines, sprawl across volcanic plains, and nestle against cliffs that haven't moved in centuries yet. Tokyo's skyline, built atop the volatile Pacific Ring of Fire, or Los Angeles freeways crisscrossing the San Andreas Fault, are testaments to human ambition brushing against geological inevitability. Engineers design buildings to sway with quakes and bridges to flex like reeds. But how do you prepare for a literal mountain erupting from a suburban park? The gap between scientific capability and public readiness is stark. Japan's early warning systems can halt bullet trains seconds before shaking begins, yet surveys show less than half of households in quake-prone areas keep emergency kits. In Iceland, where volcanoes routinely disrupt air travel, tourists still wander dangerously close to steaming fissures for selfies. This isn't just carelessness, it's a psychological disconnect. We treat the ground as static because our lives depend on that illusion. But history proves otherwise. When Indonesia's Anak Krakatau volcano collapsed in 2018, the resulting tsunami killed hundreds who'd ignored generations of local folklore warning against living too close to the shore. Infrastructure alone won't save us. Chile's earthquake-resistant architecture is among the world's most advanced, yet its 2010 quake exposed a fatal flaw. Power grids and water systems failed because backup generators were bolted to the ground, not mounted on shock absorbers. Similarly, Nepal's ancient temples often outlast modern buildings during quakes, not by resisting nature's force, but by bending with it, a lesson encoded in their flexible wooden joints and tapered designs. The real challenge isn't just stronger materials, but smarter adaptation. Dutch engineers now study how mangrove roots stabilize coastlines, applying those principles to urban foundations, while Alaskan architects elevate homes on adjustable pilings to accommodate permafrost heaves. Yet technology's limits become glaring when the Earth moves faster than algorithms can predict. New Zealand's 2016 Kaikoura earthquake defied all models by rippling across 24 separate faults in minutes, lifting seabeds 18 feet high. Traditional Maori knowledge, however, had long described the area as tapu, sacred and unstable, based on centuries of observing erratic tides and ground vibrations. This isn't about choosing between science and tradition, it's about merging them. In California, seismologists now partner with indigenous tribes to map ghost forests, stands of drowned trees marking past tsunami zones that no instrument had detected. Artists and filmmakers have become unlikely allies in bridging this awareness gap. Blockbusters like San Andreas exaggerate disaster for drama, but their depictions of crumbling landmarks sear preparedness into public consciousness. Japanese anime like Tokyo Magnitude 8.0 use intimate storytelling to show families rehearsing evacuation routes, while Icelandic director Baltasar Kormákur's film, The Deep, turned a real volcanic island survival tale into a national conversation about resilience. Even video games get it right. Ring of Fire, developed by Indonesian students, teaches players to read earthquake precursors like animal behavior and well water changes, skills drawn from ancestral wisdom. The most effective warnings often come wrapped in narrative. After the 2004 tsunami, Thai survivors recounted how elders recognized danger from the sea breathing backward, a phrase so evocative it's now taught in schools alongside tsunami science. In Mexico City, murals of the 1985 quake's devastation line subway walls, not as fear-mongering, but as visceral reminders of community strength. These stories do what data alone cannot. They make the unimaginable feel real, urgent, survivable. Because when the next mountain rises, it won't be sensors or steel that determine who survives, but whether we've learned to listen to the Earth's whispers, to each other's stories, and to the uneasy truth that solid ground is a privilege, not a promise. From the moment cinema learned to make the Earth shake on screen, filmmakers have been obsessed with mountains that appear overnight. Think of the jaw-dropping moment in 2012 when the Himalayas crumble like sandcastles, or San Andreas's fictional fault line tearing California apart to create instant peaks. These scenes aren't just spectacle, they tap into something primal. We're fascinated by landscapes that defy time because deep down we know the ground isn't as solid as it pretends to be. Hollywood exaggerates the speed. Sure, real tectonic shifts take hours, not seconds, but the emotional core is startlingly accurate. When volcanoes showed lava erupting from the Los Angeles subway in 1997, geologists rolled their eyes, yet the film's portrayal of panicked crowds and buckling infrastructure mirrored real accounts from Pompeii to Mount St. Helens. Fantasy literature takes this fascination further, weaving sudden mountains into the fabric of world-building. In Tolkien's Middle-earth, the misty mountains were raised by the Dark Lord Morgoth to hinder his enemies, a mythic echo of actual Uplift events. Video games like Horizon Zero Dawn imagine post-apocalyptic landscapes where tectonic chaos has redrawn continents overnight, while Studio Ghibli's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind features toxic jungles that spread like living earthquakes. These stories resonate because they reflect a truth science confirms. The Earth is never truly at rest, but where fiction and reality collide most powerfully is in disaster preparedness. After the day after tomorrow's exaggerated climate catastrophes, studies showed a spike in viewers researching emergency kits, proof that even flawed portrayals can spark real-world action. Geologists now consult on films like Moonfall not just for accuracy, but to plant seeds of awareness. When San Andreas depicted a tsunami swamping the Golden Gate Bridge, it borrowed from actual USGS models of Cascadia subduction zone risks. The line between entertainment and education blurs when the stakes feel this visceral. Artistic license comes with consequences, though. Blockbusters often depict scientists as lone heroes predicting the unpredictable, fostering unrealistic expectations about earthquake forecasting. And while films love showing skyscrapers toppling like dominoes, real quakes more often kill through neglected details: unsecured bookshelves, ruptured gas lines, hospitals without backup power. This gap between cinematic destruction and mundane hazards worries emergency planners. Yet there's an upside. When Twister revolutionized storm-chasing footage in 1996, it inspired a generation of meteorologists. Today, geologists hope similar magic might strike for tectonics. The most enduring depictions aren't about destruction at all, they're about awe. Japanese woodblock prints of Mount Fuji's eruptions capture both terror and beauty, just as Iceland's Sigur Rós sets drone footage of steaming fissures to ethereal music. These works remind us that geological chaos isn't just a threat, it's the engine of our planet's creativity. Every mountain range, every canyon exists because the Earth dared to rewrite itself. And as climate change loads the dice for more upheaval, that message matters more than ever. What happens when the planet's fever starts cracking its very bones? Climate change isn't just melting ice and raising sea levels. It's stirring forces deep beneath our feet in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Take Greenland, where retreating glaciers have lightened the load on the Earth's crust so dramatically that the land is now rising at nearly an inch per year. This isn't just a quirky geological rebound, it's a planetary-scale game of Jenga, where removing ice sheets can destabilize fault lines and awaken dormant volcanoes. Scientists call it isostatic rebound, but the consequences are anything but academic. In Alaska, thawing permafrost isn't just releasing methane, it's causing the ground to slump and buckle like a deflating air mattress, triggering landslides that bury forests and reroute rivers overnight. Then there's the methane time bomb. As Arctic permafrost thaws, it doesn't just release greenhouse gases, it creates underground pockets of pressurized gas that can explode without warning. In Siberia, massive craters have begun appearing in the tundra, some over 100 feet deep, where methane eruptions have blasted through the weakened ground. These aren't isolated oddities, they're warning signs of a subsurface domino effect. When Norway's Storegga landslide occurred 8,000 years ago, a catastrophic collapse triggered by methane hydrate destabilization, it sent tsunami waves crashing across the North Sea. Today, with ocean temperatures rising, similar undersea methane deposits along continental shelves are showing signs of instability. The feedback loops get even more alarming when you consider how water, or the lack of it, affects the Earth's crust. California's Central Valley, drained of groundwater for agriculture, has sunk over 30 feet in some areas, a phenomenon called subsidence. This isn't just about sinkholes. The weight redistribution can nudge nearby fault lines closer to rupture. Meanwhile, increased rainfall from climate change has made mountainous regions like the Himalayas more prone to catastrophic landslides, as water infiltrates rock fractures and acts like a lubricant between tectonic plates. It's a cruel irony. The same rains that nourish crops can also prime the land for collapse. Religions have long framed these upheavals as cosmic balance sheets. Hindu texts describe the earth goddess Bhumi groaning under humanity's weight, her tremors a plea for restraint. Native American traditions speak of a time of great shaking when human greed disrupts nature's harmony. Even medieval Christian scholars like Hildegard of Bingen interpreted earthquakes as divine corrections for ecological sin. These aren't just metaphors, they are ancient recognition of the bond between environmental stewardship and geological stability. When Tibetan monks refused to mine sacred mountains, or Maori elders opposed drilling near fault lines, they're applying millennia-old risk assessments disguised as spirituality. The science is catching up to this wisdom. Studies now show that deforestation can increase landslide risks by removing root systems that bind soil, while overpumping aquifers has been linked to seismic swarms in places like Oklahoma. What ancient cultures called the Earth's anger, modern geologists term induced seismicity, but both acknowledge the same truth: we're not just passengers on this planet. We're participants in its geological story, and our choices echo in the very bedrock beneath us. As temperatures climb and the ground grows restless, one question looms: will we heed these warnings as scientific data points, or will it take a mountain rising in our backyard to make us listen? Religious texts and traditions have long grappled with the terrifying power of geological upheaval, framing earthquakes and sudden land changes as divine messages written in stone and fire. In the Book of Revelation, collapsing mountains herald the apocalypse, while the Quran describes Judgment Day with vivid imagery of the earth casting forth its burdens. Hindu cosmology takes this further. envisioning the god Shiva performing his cosmic dance to destroy and recreate the universe in endless cycles. These aren't just metaphors, they're attempts to reconcile human vulnerability with the incomprehensible scale of planetary forces. When Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii, early Christians saw it as God's wrath against pagan excess. Centuries later, the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 sparked theological debates across Europe, with some calling it punishment for sin, while others argued it proved nature operated beyond divine whims. But spiritual interpretations often hide sharp observations about natural patterns. The Quran's description of mountains as pegs stabilizing the earth aligns uncannily with modern plate tectonics, the idea that mountain roots anchor shifting crustal plates. Similarly, Hindu texts that speak of the serpent Ananta supporting the world mirror scientific models of magma convection currents driving continental movement. Even indigenous Australian Dreamtime stories describe landscapes shaped by ancestral beings in ways that match modern erosion studies. The line between myth and geology blurs when you realize these traditions encoded survival knowledge, like the Maori practice of building fortified villages on stable bedrock after observing how quakes toppled settlements on softer ground. Animals, however, need no scriptures to anticipate the Earth's tantrums. Minutes before the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, elephants in Sri Lanka fled inland, dogs refused to go outside, and flamingos abandoned low-lying nests, all while coastal tourists remained oblivious. Science is now catching up to this ancient wisdom. Researchers have documented how birds evacuate earthquake zones days before tremors, likely sensing subterranean gas releases or electromagnetic disturbances. In China, officials once evacuated a city based solely on erratic snake behavior, dodging a major quake that struck hours later. Even cows and deer exhibit strange restlessness before seismic events, a phenomenon now studied through motion-sensitive livestock collars. What's fascinating is how these animal instincts intersect with spiritual beliefs. In Japan, catfish have been considered earthquake predictors since the 17th century, a folk belief that gained scientific credence when studies showed their sensitivity to electrical changes in water. Similarly, Native American tribes noted that ground squirrels vanished before quakes, while Andean shamans read llama-herd movements like seismic forecasts. These aren't magical thinking, they're evidence of evolutionary adaptation. Pigeons detect infrasound waves humans can't hear, while some fish sense pressure shifts through specialized swim bladders. When Tibetan monks build monasteries where yaks graze undisturbed or Pacific Islanders follow bird migrations to avoid tsunami zones, they're leveraging millennia of interspecies observation. The lesson here transcends science or spirituality. It's about humility. Whether through prayer or particle physics, humans have always sought ways to predict the unpredictable. Yet time and again, the creatures sharing our planet prove better attuned to the Earth's whispers. Perhaps the oldest survival manual isn't written in scrolls or datasets, but in the twitch of a rabbit's ear or the sudden silence of crickets, a language we're only now relearning to understand. Long before humans invented seismographs, nature had already perfected its own early warning systems, creatures attuned to vibrations we can't perceive. When the Earth stirs with impending upheaval, animals often sense it first. Elephants, for instance, pick up infrasound low-frequency rumbles generated by grinding tectonic plates through their massive feet, which act like living seismometers. During the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, herds in Sri Lanka stampeded to higher ground nearly an hour before tsunami waves hit, their trunks raised like antennas detecting distant danger. Similarly, birds exhibit uncanny foresight. ornithologists tracking golden-winged warblers discovered they fled Tennessee en masse just days before a 4.8 magnitude quake shook the region, likely sensing electromagnetic disturbances through magnetite crystals in their beaks. This isn't limited to land animals. Deep-sea oarfish, rare serpentine creatures that normally dwell in the abyss, have been documented surfacing near Japanese coasts before major quakes, their lateral lines detecting changes in water pressure from crustal movements. Even humble organisms like nematode worms writhe violently when placed near fault zones, reacting to subterranean gas releases before human instruments register any activity. What's remarkable is how consistently these behaviors appear in indigenous knowledge systems. The Maori of New Zealand speak of the tui bird's anxious song preceding landslides, while Native American tribes in California observed ground squirrels vanishing from fault lines weeks before tremors. Scientists are now decoding these biological signals to augment our mechanical warning systems. In Italy, researchers have installed motion-activated cameras in barns to monitor cows' restlessness, as herd agitation reliably spikes before quakes. Japan's Earthquake Fish project tracks deep-sea fish migrations via underwater drones, while Chinese seismologists study ant colonies' sudden relocations as potential precursors. The goal isn't to replace technology, but to create hybrid networks where algorithms learn from millennia of evolutionary adaptation. After all, animals have been refining these survival skills for hundreds of millions of years, far longer than humans have studied plate tectonics. Yet harnessing this knowledge requires humility. When dogs whine or bees abandon hives before quakes, they're not performing feats of clairvoyance, they're simply noticing what our dulled senses miss. Birds detect airborne ions released by stressed rocks, snakes sense thermal shifts through infrared pits, even goldfish orient differently in aquariums as electromagnetic fields warp. These subtle cues form a language of seismic forecasting written in feathers, scales, and fur. As climate change accelerates geological instability, relearning this language might be our best chance to stay one step ahead of the shifting ground. Because when the next big one hits, the first alert may not come from a satellite or sensor, but from the panicked cries of birds taking flight, or the uneasy silence of a forest holding its breath. The economic toll of such sudden land changes is staggering, reshaping not just landscapes but livelihoods. When Pakistan's Balochistan mountain surged upward in 2018, it severed irrigation canals, rendering thousands of acres of farmland useless overnight. The cost, over $200 million in agricultural losses alone, a ripple effect that left markets scrambling and food prices soaring. This isn't an isolated incident. In Alaska, where thawing permafrost buckles roads and runways at a rate of 2 feet per year, the state spends roughly $40 million annually on infrastructure, repairs essentially rebuilding what the earth keeps unbuilding. Nor are these impacts confined to rural areas. When the 2011 Christchurch earthquake liquefied the ground beneath New Zealand's second-largest city, the resulting land subsidence dropped property values by nearly 30%, triggering a $5 billion insurance crisis. Similar patterns emerge globally. After Indonesia's 2018 Palu earthquake triggered soil liquefaction that swallowed entire neighborhoods, reconstruction costs surpassed $900 million, a sum that doesn't account for the informal economy of street vendors and day laborers who vanished along with the ground beneath their stalls. Perhaps most unsettling is how these events expose the fragility of modern supply chains. The 2010 eruption of Iceland's Eyjafjallajökull volcano, which created no new mountains but spewed ash across European skies, grounded 100,000 flights, costing airlines $250 million per day. When Taiwan's 2016 Meinong earthquake disrupted semiconductor factories, it caused a 3% drop in global electronics production, proving that even localized geological spasms can throttle the world economy. Yet within these disruptions lie unexpected opportunities. Japan's frequent quakes have birthed a thriving industry in disaster-resistant architecture, exporting earthquake-proof building techniques worth over $6 billion annually. In Chile, where the 2010 quake devastated vineyards, the resulting soil mineral shifts unexpectedly elevated wine quality, creating a premium market for earthquake vintages. Even tourism adapts. Iceland now offers volcano sightseeing flights, while New Zealand's quake-ravaged Christchurch rebranded as an open-air exhibit of urban resilience. The lesson is clear. In a world where mountains can rise and fall without notice, economic survival depends on anticipating the unanticipated. Just as animals evolved to read the Earth's whispers, societies must learn to build flexibility into their foundations, because the next seismic surprise won't just shake the ground. It will shake the very systems we rely on to eat, work, and thrive. When the ground shifts without warning, the tremors ripple far beyond the physical landscape. They shake the very foundations of economies. Take Haiti's 2010 earthquake, a catastrophe that lasted mere seconds but left an $8 billion scar on the nation's economy. Beyond the immediate collapse of buildings and roads, the disaster crippled textile factories that accounted for nearly 80% of the country's exports, leaving thousands jobless and triggering a recession that took years to recover from. But the economic fallout of sudden geological change isn't just about repair bills. It rewrites entire industries. In Iceland, where the 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption grounded flights across Europe, the tourism sector initially braced for ruin. Yet within months, the same volcano became a magnet for adventure seekers, spawning helicopter tours and specialty travel agencies that now contribute millions annually. It's a paradox of destruction and opportunity, one that plays out differently in every corner of the globe. Insurance markets tell another layer of this story. After California's 1994 Northridge earthquake exposed gaps in coverage, less than 20% of damaged homes had adequate policies. The entire industry recalibrated. Today, insurers use satellite data and AI-driven risk models to price premiums, with some companies even offering discounts for homes retrofitted with base isolators modeled after ancient Japanese temple designs. But these innovations come with stark inequalities. In developing nations like Nepal or Ecuador, where most buildings lack seismic upgrades, less than 5% of homeowners carry earthquake insurance, leaving entire populations financially exposed when the earth moves. Then there's the hidden economic domino effect. When Pakistan's 2021 Gwadar earthquake triggered a mud volcano that swallowed fishing villages, the local seafood supply chain collapsed overnight, not just for markets, but for restaurants as far away as Karachi. Similarly, when New Zealand's 2016 Kaikoura quake damaged a critical railway line, the disruption cost the dairy industry over $300,000 per day in spoiled milk shipments. These supply chain vulnerabilities reveal how localized geological events can throttle global commerce, from delayed smartphone deliveries due to Taiwanese chip factory closures to rising coffee prices after Guatemalan landslides wipe out harvests. Yet some communities have turned instability into enterprise. Japan's disaster tourism industry thrives on sites like Kobe's Earthquake Memorial Museum, while Chile's wine region's market, terroir transformed by tectonics, as a premium selling point. Even Iceland's volatile geology powers its economy. Literally, geothermal plants harness the same forces that create new mountains, providing nearly 90% of the nation's heating. The lesson is clear. In a world where the ground can rewrite itself overnight, resilience isn't just about rebuilding, it's about reimagining. What's startling is how closely these modern economic patterns mirror ancient wisdom. Venetian merchants of the 14th century diversified their trade routes after repeated earthquakes shattered their Adriatic ports, a medieval version of risk management. Meanwhile, the Silk Road's success hinged on avoiding geologically unstable zones documented in caravan oral histories. Today's algorithms crunching satellite data follow the same basic principle our ancestors knew. The Earth keeps its own ledger, and those who read its signs survive. As we peer deeper into this interplay of rock and finance, a surprising bridge emerges: mythology. Folklore from the Andes to the Arctic didn't just explain geological chaos, it encoded survival strategies for weathering its economic storms. When Inca legends warned against hoarding wealth in landslide-prone valleys, or Norse sagas advised storing grain in bedrock caves, they were offering risk assessment disguised as storytelling. Now, as scientists mine these narratives for clues about disaster patterns, we're discovering that the oldest economic models might have been written not in ledgers, but in legends. Greek myths didn't just entertain, they mapped the underworld. When ancient storytellers described Typhon, the monstrous giant buried beneath Mount Etna, his fiery breath became an early metaphor for magma chambers we now know churn below active volcanoes. This isn't poetic coincidence, it's observational science disguised as legend. Modern researchers tracing these myths have made startling discoveries, like the link between Mediterranean tales of Poseidon's trident striking the Earth and actual seismic hotspots where tectonic plates collide. Indigenous knowledge proves even more precise. The Maori story of Uamoko, the unborn god whose stirrings cause quakes, aligns with modern understanding of subduction zones along New Zealand's coast. These narratives weren't mere fantasies, they were field guides passed down through generations. Nowhere is this crossover more striking than in water divination. For centuries, scientists dismissed Native American traditions of praying at sacred springs as superstition, until hydrogeologists realized these sites often marked fractures in bedrock where underground aquifers surface. The Hopi tribe's reverence for specific desert seeps led researchers to discover a vast hidden water network beneath the Arizona sands. Similarly, Australian Aboriginal songlines describing water veins in parched landscapes have guided modern drilling projects to life-saving reserves. What ancient cultures called spirit paths, geologists now recognize as hydrological maps encoded in oral tradition. The real magic happens when these time-tested insights meet cutting-edge tools. In the Amazon, satellite imagery combined with indigenous accounts of enchanted caves revealed previously unknown limestone caverns housing unique ecosystems. Icelandic volcanologists now cross-reference medieval sagas filled with precise descriptions of lava flow patterns, with drone surveys to predict eruption paths. Even the Bible's account of Jericho's walls collapsing has been re-examined through seismic lenses, with archaeologists finding evidence of an ancient earthquake along the city's fault line right around the estimated time frame. This fusion of myth and measurement isn't just rewriting geology textbooks, it's expanding where we look for planetary upheaval. When NASA Mars rovers discovered evidence of sudden sediment shifts in Gale crater, scientists nicknamed the phenomenon ghost dunes, evoking Navajo stories of shape-shifting Earth spirits. Europa's icy crust, with its chaotic fractures and plumes, mirrors Inuit legends of frozen seas stirred by subterranean giants. If our ancestors could detect Earth's restlessness through storytelling, might their narratives hold clues for decoding geological drama on other worlds? The same intuition that linked Typhon to magma might one day help us interpret the tremors shaking distant moons, proving that sometimes the oldest stories make the sharpest scientific tools. If Earth can birth mountains in days, what geological dramas might be unfolding across the cosmos? Look to Mars, where Olympus Mons towers 16 miles high, 3 times Everest's height, a volcanic behemoth that may have grown in explosive spurts rather than slow millennia. Unlike Earth's gradual plate tectonics, Mars's stagnant crust allowed lava to pile vertically like syrup on a pancake, creating a peak so massive it would span the length of France. But here's the twist. Some planetary scientists argue this gargantuan volcano didn't form over eons. Its sheer volume suggests periods of hyperactive eruption, where lava cascaded across the landscape fast enough to reshape entire regions within human timescales. Then there's Io, Jupiter's pizza-colored moon, where volcanic plumes shoot 50 miles into space and rivers of molten rock rewrite the surface faster than weather erodes Earth's mountains. NASA Juno spacecraft recently captured an eruption so violent it could have buried Manhattan under 100 feet of lava in hours. This isn't science fiction. It's routine for a world where tidal forces from Jupiter's gravity knead Io's interior like putty, generating heat that fuels non-stop geological chaos. Sulfur-spewing vents build new plateaus overnight, while calderas collapse into sinkholes the size of cities before fresh lava seals them shut. These alien landscapes aren't just curiosities, they're mirrors reflecting Earth's most extreme possibilities. When Iceland's Fagradalsfjall erupted in 2021, its relatively modest lava flows offered a scaled-down preview of Io's infernos. Similarly, Hawaii's shield volcanoes, though puny compared to Olympus Mons, follow the same basic blueprint of stacked lava layers. Studying these planetary analogues helps scientists ask daring questions. Could Earth's crust ever behave like Mars's under different conditions? Might our planet have hosted Io-style hypervolcanism in its violent youth? The answers lurk in places like Australia's Deccan Traps, where ancient flood basalts suggest periods when Earth itself was a world of overnight mountains. Yet the most profound insight isn't about geology, it's about perspective. For centuries, humans assumed our planet's pace of change was universal. Now we know the cosmos operates on a spectrum of speeds, from Mars's occasional growth spurts to Io's real-time facelifts. When the next mystery mountain rises on Earth, we'll understand it not as an anomaly but as part of a grander pattern, one where planets, moons, and asteroids are all constantly reinventing themselves, each following their own rhythm. And somewhere in some distant star system, another civilization might be staring at their own sudden peaks, wondering if they're alone in witnessing such wonders. Jules Verne peered into the abyss of geological chaos long before science could explain it. In Journey to the Center of the Earth, his characters navigate caverns where oceans boil underground and magnetic storms warp compasses. A fantastical vision that eerily mirrors modern discoveries about Earth's molten core and shifting poles. Verne wasn't just entertaining, he was scripting humanity's primal fear of the ground's betrayal. Fast forward to today's climate fiction, and the terror hasn't faded, it's evolved. In Kim Stanley Robinson's The Ministry for the Future, a Himalayan glacier collapse floods Delhi within hours, while Paolo Bacigalupi's The Water Knife depicts the American Southwest fracturing into warring states as aquifers collapse. These aren't just dystopias, they're rehearsals. What makes these stories resonate isn't their apocalypses, but their survivors. Consider Station 11's Traveling Symphony, performing Shakespeare in the ruins of civilization after a superplague, or the road's father and son clinging to hope in a world reduced to ash. These narratives transform geological upheaval from spectacle into a mirror, forcing us to ask who we become when the Earth forgets its shape. Japanese author Sakayo Komatsu took this further in Japan Sinks, where an entire archipelago vanishes into the Pacific. His characters don't just face drowning landmasses, they grapple with the erasure of cultural memory, of graves and temples swallowed by the sea. Yet literature's greatest power lies in its paradoxes. While sci-fi writers like Neil Stephenson engineer geoengineering solutions in Termination Shock, dumping sulfur into the atmosphere to cool the planet, Margaret Atwood's Mad Adam trilogy warns that tampering with nature unleashes unintended horrors. This tension between control and surrender defines our relationship with Earth's volatility. Even children's books like The Magic School Bus Inside the Earth subtly teach that the ground beneath us is alive, shifting, and far beyond human command. The most haunting tales emerge from real events. When Krakatoa erupted in 1883, its shockwaves circled the globe 7 times, inspiring Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes story The Five Orange Pips, where volcanic ash becomes a murder weapon. More recently, the 2004 tsunami birthed novels like The Tsunami Countess by Patricia McArdle, weaving historical fact with survivor testimony to process collective trauma. Fiction, it seems, is the loom where we weave raw geological terror into something we can almost bear. Now the question shifts from understanding to intervention. If writers once imagined mountains rising overnight, today's authors script humanity's attempts to play God. In The Bone Clocks, David Mitchell envisions a near future where geoengineers battle over climate manipulation, while the Wind-Up Girls' biotech empires seed the atmosphere with tailored microbes. These stories expose our Faustian bargain. The dream of controlling nature may be the very force that undoes us. Yet they also offer glimpses of symbiosis. Indigenous futurism in Rebecca Roanhorse's Black Sun, where volcanologists work alongside spirit walkers, or the Overstories activists learning to speak for trees. The line between prophecy and parable blurs when a novel's nightmare becomes tomorrow's headline. When Verne wrote about a superstorm sinking New York in the purchase of the North Pole, it read as whimsy. After Hurricane Sandy, it felt like a warning. Perhaps that's literature's ultimate role, not to predict the future, but to prepare our hearts for the unthinkable. Because if history teaches anything, it's that the Earth will have the last word, whether we're ready to hear it or not. Geoengineering the very bones of our planet sounds like something ripped from a superhero movie, but the science behind it is shockingly real. Imagine a world where we could defuse tectonic time bombs before they erupt, or even sculpt new mountain ranges to redirect weather patterns. Some researchers propose using controlled explosions to relieve pressure along fault lines, like popping a blister before it bursts. Others suggest drilling deep into magma chambers to release pent-up energy gradually, potentially preventing catastrophic earthquakes. The boldest visions include injecting materials into the crust to reinforce weak zones, essentially giving the Earth a skeletal brace. But these aren't just thought experiments. In the 1960s, the U.S. military's Project Plowshare explored using nuclear bombs to carve harbors and canals, a chilling reminder of how easily geology can be weaponized. More recently, Iceland's Krafla magma testbed project successfully drilled into a magma chamber, opening doors to monitoring and possibly influencing volcanic activity. Even carbon capture proposals now include pumping compressed CO2 into basalt formations where it mineralizes, a process that at scale could subtly reshape underground structures over time. The ethical quicks, and here runs deep, who gets to decide when and where to alter the planet's architecture? A controlled quake in Alaska might spare Anchorage, but could it trigger a tsunami in Japan? The 2015 Nepal earthquake demonstrated how seismic waves ripple across continents, an unintended domino effect no engineer can fully predict. Indigenous communities, already disproportionately affected by climate change, warn against treating the Earth as a machine to tinker with. Maori elders speak of Wakapapa, the sacred interconnectedness of land and life, arguing that tampering with one stratum risks unraveling ecosystems we don't yet understand. Then there's the haunting precedent of unintended consequences. When engineers tried to stabilize Venice's sinking foundations by pumping groundwater in the 20th century, they accidentally accelerated the city's subsidence. Similarly, China's Three Gorges Dam has been linked to over 3,000 tremors since its completion, proof that even well-intentioned projects can awaken sleeping giants. The scariest part, we're already geoengineering by accident. Fracking-induced quakes in Oklahoma and groundwater extraction sinking Mexico City reveal how carelessly we're already bending the crust. Yet the evidence for rapid natural mountain building keeps these debates urgent. Pakistan's 2013 quake island, Zalzala Ko, proved how quickly the planet can rewrite its own map. Satellite data now shows sections of the Andes rising faster than expected, while Iceland's ongoing volcanic eruptions birth new landmasses before our eyes. These phenomena force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. If the Earth can reshape itself overnight without our consent, shouldn't we at least try to steer the process? The answer may lie not in controlling geology, but in learning its language, harnessing AI to predict upheavals, adapting infrastructure to flex with the ground's whims, and above all, humbly accepting that some forces defy human mastery. Because the next mountain won't wait for a committee vote, it'll rise when the Earth decides. A grainy black and white photograph from 1883 shows sailors standing on what appears to be a freshly formed island off the coast of Iceland, their boots sinking into still steaming volcanic ash as they plant a flag. This image, captured just hours after the island of Surtsey burst from the Atlantic in a fury of lava and smoke, is one of the earliest photographic records of our planet's ability to rewrite itself in a single day. Fast forward to 2018, when high-resolution satellite time-lapses captured Pakistan's mud volcano island Zalzala Ko emerging from the seafloor, its birth, growth, and eventual erosion all documented pixel by pixel from space. These aren't just pictures, they're frames from Earth's live performance, proving beyond doubt that mountains and islands can appear almost overnight. Eyewitness accounts add a human dimension to this geological drama. Survivors of the 1964 Alaska earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in North America, described watching entire stretches of coastline lurch upward like a waking giant. Fishermen in Cook Inlet reported stranded boats suddenly resting on dry land as the seafloor rose 30 feet in minutes. Similar stories echo across time. Nicaraguan villagers in 1850 witnessed Cerro Negro volcano explode from a cornfield, its cone growing taller than a church steeple within days. Even Charles Darwin, during his voyage on the Beagle, documented Chilean coastal land rising permanently after an earthquake, an observation later confirmed by modern GPS measurements showing the continent still uplifting from that same event nearly 2 centuries later. The convergence of technology and testimony is what makes this evidence so compelling. When Japanese fishermen filmed the birth of Nishinoshima Island in 2013, recording the exact moment boiling lava breached the ocean surface, their smartphone footage matched infrared satellite data showing underwater volcanic vents activating hours earlier. In Iceland, drone pilots have captured magma fracturing frozen ground in real time, creating rift valleys at speeds visible to the naked eye. Even 19th century surveyors' hand-drawn maps of California's Santa Cruz Mountains, once dismissed as exaggerations, have been vindicated by LiDAR scans revealing how the 1865 earthquake actually folded the landscape like crumpled paper. What's striking is how these records expose the limitations of human perception. Before photography, sudden land changes were often relegated to myth, like the legendary island of High Brassel, said to appear and vanish off Ireland's coast. Now, with radar satellites like Sentinel-1 measuring ground deformation down to the millimeter, we're discovering that the Earth shifts constantly, just usually too slowly for us to notice. The rare events we do witness, like Indonesia's 2018 Palu earthquake liquefying entire neighborhoods in seconds, are merely the exceptions that reveal the rule. Our planet is a work in progress, and we're living on its drafting table. These visuals do more than document, they transform how we understand geological time. A single time-lapse of Alaska's rising coast collapses centuries of gradual uplift into a 10-second revelation. Core samples from New Zealand's earthquake-raised beaches, showing layers of seashells suddenly stranded far above water, read like freeze frames from a stop-motion film. Even something as simple as a sidewalk cracked by a fault line becomes a tangible lesson in planetary dynamics when you realize it marks where two continents are grinding past each other at the speed your fingernails grow. The lesson isn't just that the Earth changes, it's that we're finally learning to see it happen. When 19th century geologists debated whether landscapes formed through catastrophes or slow accumulation, they were missing the point. It's both. The same forces that built the Himalayas grain by grain over millennia can also hoist a mountain in a matter of days when conditions align. And with every new drone video of a steaming fissure or satellite map of a warping fault line, we're reminded that geology isn't just history, it's breaking news. The ground beneath our feet isn't just rock and soil. It's a living manuscript constantly being rewritten by forces far beyond human control. When mountains surge upward overnight or coastlines vanish beneath the waves, we're confronted with an undeniable truth. Earth operates on its own terms, indifferent to our plans and permanence. These sudden geological upheavals are more than just scientific curiosities, they are profound teachers, offering lessons in humility, resilience, and awe. History is littered with civilizations that forgot this reality. The Minoans of Crete built their palaces with no fear of the sea, until tsunamis from the thorough eruptions shattered their confidence. Pompeii's residents lounged in the shadow of Vesuvius, unaware the mountain was stirring. Even today, skyscrapers rise in seismic zones, as if concrete and steel can outmatch tectonic might. But the Earth has a way of humbling our hubris. When Pakistan's earthquake birthed an island in 2013, or when Alaska's coastline lurched skyward in 1964, these events weren't just geological anomalies, they were reminders that humanity is a fleeting guest on a planet that's been reshaping itself for 4.5 billion years. Yet within this humility lies an unexpected gift, the capacity to adapt. The Inuit didn't just survive the Arctic's shifting ice, they thrived by studying its rhythms, building flexible shelters that swayed with the ground instead of resisting it. Japanese architects, schooled by centuries of quakes, designed pagodas with central pillars that danced during tremors, a principle now echoed in modern skyscrapers. Even in the face of disaster, human ingenuity finds a way. After the 2011 Christchurch earthquake, New Zealanders transformed rubble into art, weaving shattered bricks into memorials that honored loss while celebrating renewal. This duality, terror and wonder, destruction and rebirth, is the heart of our relationship with the planet. The same volcanic soil that buries cities also nourishes the world's most fertile farms. Earthquakes that topple buildings expose hidden mineral veins, fueling new industries. And those sudden mountains, they become sacred sites, like Nicaragua's Cerro Negro, where locals now sandboard down slopes that didn't exist 2 centuries ago. The Earth's chaos isn't just something to fear, it's a call to stay curious, to stay flexible, and above all, to stay humble. So what do we do with this knowledge? Start by listening to the scientists tracking fault lines, to the indigenous elders reading animal behavior, even to the ground itself as it whispers warnings through cracks and tremors. Build with respect, not defiance, designing cities that work with geology rather than against it. And most importantly, cultivate wonder. When you feel the ground shake or see a new island emerge from the sea, don't just see danger, see a planet alive, dynamic, and endlessly surprising. Because the greatest lesson Earth teaches isn't just about survival, it's about learning to thrive in a world where the only constant is change. The mystery of the mountain that grew overnight is more than a geological oddity. It's a window into the restless soul of our planet. Across time and cultures, these sudden transformations have forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The Earth isn't the unchanging stage we imagine, but a dynamic, ever-evolving force with its own rhythm and rules. Ancient storytellers understood this instinctively, weaving tales of gods and giants shaping landscapes in moments of divine fury. Today, satellites and seismographs reveal the science behind those legends, proving that reality can be just as astonishing as myth. What makes these events so compelling isn't just their rarity, it's what they reveal about our place in nature's grand design. For centuries, humanity has built cities, drawn borders, and forged identities based on the illusion of permanence. Yet every so often, the Earth reminds us who's really in charge. Whether it's Pakistan's newborn island or Alaska's lurching coastline, these upheavals humble our modern arrogance, connecting us to ancestors who stood equally awestruck before nature's power. The same questions that haunted medieval monks witnessing new mountains rise now drive scientists peering into magma chambers. How, why, and what next? This interplay of past and present is where the real magic happens. When a geologist reads core samples from a sudden uplift and finds patterns matching a 2,000-year-old Maori chant, or when satellite images of a mud volcano mirror descriptions in a 9th century Persian text, it's proof that human curiosity transcends time. We're all detectives piecing together the same planetary mystery, using whatever tools our era provides, whether it's stone carvings or synthetic aperture radar. The mountain that grew overnight isn't just a scientific puzzle. It's a bridge between ways of knowing, reminding us that data and legend can coexist in the search for truth. As we continue to witness Earth's transformations, the wisest stance isn't fear or domination, but engaged humility. Communities that thrive in unstable regions, from Iceland's volcano watchers to Nepal's earthquake preparedness networks, don't ignore the risks or pretend to control them. Instead, they cultivate a deep dialogue with the land, learning its warning signs and adapting their lives accordingly. There's profound resilience in this approach, a recognition that survival isn't about conquering nature, but dancing with its rhythms. So the next time you feel solid ground beneath your feet, take a moment to appreciate its quiet miracle and its potential for surprise. Share your own stories in the comments below. Has your culture preserved memories of landscapes that changed overnight? Don't forget to subscribe and join us as we keep unraveling history's greatest mysteries, one shifting stone at a time. Because while the Earth may never stop surprising us, our capacity for wonder and understanding only grows stronger with each new